Fantasy Forecast with Grindberg and bigz, take 3. Welcome to the Fantasy Forecast with Grindberg and bigz. I am bigz. He is Grindberg. We are here to talk about wide receiver offseason moves and rumors, and we are firing on 3 cylinders. So if you know anything about engines, you know that we're either 1, 5, or 9 cylinders short. What's going on, Mike? How you doing?
Well, now that we've got through the technical difficulties, I'm doing great because it's been a busy week for the NFL. A lot of movement and a lot of rumors headed into today. And
sure are, Mike.
Exactly, man. Let's cover this, bigz. Let's get into it. Let's get into the nitty gritty here. And
you want to probe me?
I do. That's my favorite part of the show, and it's my favorite part of these types of shows is when I get to talk ball with you and go over, the breaking news. So the first one we're going to talk about is Tee Higgins. Now, he's going to be tagged again, and what's the situation there? Well, is he going to be a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1 next year, despite battling injuries in 2024? Higgins posted a career high 10 touchdowns and 911 yards in just 12 games, finishing as the wide receiver 17 in half PPR scoring. With Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, I think he still remains a really solid wide receiver 2, if not wide receiver 1 with some upside here, bigz. Given that Tee Higgins has been tagged again, how do you view his upside for 2025? Would you prioritize him as the top wide receiver 2, with all these other guys around him? What are your thoughts here?
So I'm approaching this Tee Higgins thing from 3 different angles. The first is the franchise tag. The franchise tag doesn't mean a whole lot. Basically, it's a contract thing where a team can prevent their player from entering unrestricted free agency and then continue to do what they're going to do with the player. So if Tee Higgins is in the Cincinnati Bengals long-term plans, basically putting the franchise tag on him, all that does is it puts a pause on his contract negotiations. Now, if he accepts the franchise tag and reports to camp, if nothing else happens, then he would play under the salary dictated by the franchise tag. However, it doesn't mean that they can't trade him. It doesn't mean that they can't sign him to an extension. By all accounts, from Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Tee Higgins, and the Cincinnati Bengals have been working to try and restructure Tee Higgins' contract. So we might not have anything resolved until August or September with this situation. He is under the franchise tag, but that really doesn't take effect until training camp starts, and then he would have to sit out or whatever. They can restructure his contract at any point this time. They can also trade him at any point this time. So where Tee Higgins is going to land is going to make the difference in my next 2 points. The first of those being, I am not a fan of Tee Higgins' injury history. Tee Higgins is oft hurt, and I've had him in Dynasty before and moved off him and will not go back. So I don't like him in Dynasty. I think that if he does go to somewhere else that needs a wide receiver 1, he will be operating as a wide receiver 1 without necessarily having the skill set to do it, and might come up short. He's a great points per game wide receiver, but he doesn't always stay on the field. So the way that I'm approaching Tee Higgins for 2025, at least at this point, is that A, he's going to be a Cincinnati Bengal. B, I don't want him in Dynasty. And C, I love him in best ball, especially stacked with whichever quarterback he's going to be on. Now, when we talk about redraft, which is the focus of the fantasy forecast, I will draft him if he's my wide receiver 3. If I have 2 other options that I've taken care of first and Tee Higgins is still available, then I will go ahead and look to draft Tee Higgins. I don't want him as one of my primary 2 wide receivers.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail right on the head with that one, especially in the redraft form. I think you hit all formats really on the head here, bigz, with your Tee Higgins analysis. I'm in the same boat here. I'm veering away from him, especially because of his injury history. If he stays a Bengal, you know what to expect from him. Probably 12 to 15 games played in the top 24 wide receivers, but you're going to have these boomer bust games that you're going to have a hard time figuring out when he's going to go off. So yeah, peg him as your wide receiver 3 if you can get him. But at this stage, I don't think many people are going to be letting you have that as a value. So yeah, let's move on to Tyler Lockett, who's released from the Seahawks, clears $17 million in cap space while his time in Seattle has ended. I don't think his career is over. I'm interested to see your take on this, bigz, because there's been rumors about him headed to the Las Vegas Raiders with the connection with former Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll, and there are potential landing spots for the 32-year-old. Coming off a solid 2024, he had 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. He could be a key player for the Raiders offense, depending on the quarterback situation. So as a diehard Raiders fan, bigz, how excited would you be to see Tyler Lockett in silver and black? Do you think he could be a strong fit for the Raiders offense? And how do you see him impacting their football landscape in fantasy in 2025?
He's not going to impact the Raiders at all. Probably the hardest part about being a Raider is being a Raiders fan is, well, let me just sum it up with a quiz. Name one person this offseason that has not been linked to the Raiders in a clickbait article.
Yeah, everybody that's been
I'll
on.
wait.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you have a team that's as garbage as we've been in recent history, we tend to get all of those rumors headed towards us. Oh, Aaron Rodgers is going to go to the Raiders. Sam Darnold, J.J. McCarthy, Geno Smith, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Tee Higgins. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And Tyler Lockett is not a productive wide receiver anymore. He might have some utility, but he's not going to be one of the primary four pass catching options on the Raiders, even if he does come to Las Vegas. So he's not an impact player at all anymore, and I'm not worried about it. I don't think he's not going to beat out Jacoby Myers as a slot receiver. He's not capable of playing as an X or even a Y anymore, and that's kind of something that the Seahawks figured out. And the Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, and then whatever tall X the Raiders get, Tyler Lockett won't have an impact. The only thing that he could do is possibly take over Trey Tucker's position as the wide receiver 4 or the pass catching option 4, and maybe run some downfield goes and stuff like that. But he's not, as far as the Raiders are concerned, he's not going to do anything. Now, could I see him playing more of a Cooper Kupp type role in Los Angeles? Absolutely. But they just signed Tutu Atwell to a 1-year, $10 million extension. Could he find his way onto the New England Patriots? They have a ton of cap money. Yes, but they already have a Pop Douglas at home. So to move on from him. So, I mean, some other potential landing spots could be Dallas taking over for an aging Brandon Cooks. I always get Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods mixed up. One of those two, Houston or Dallas, whatever, some Texas team that I don't care about. I mean, there are options, but the days of him being an impact guy are over.
What about another impact player from the Seahawks that recently asked for a trade? And I'm talking about DK Metcalf, officially asking for the trade out of Seattle. Had a quieter 2024. He just posted 66 catches, but he had 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns. The rise of JSN, who became the top target in that offense. Metcalf's role seemed to diminish, prompting his trade request. He's 27 years old. Some may say he's still in the prime of his career. So bigz, given JSN's emerging as the top receiver in Seattle and Metcalf seemed to lose a step last season, how do you see his value shifting if he's traded to a new team? Do you think he could still be a high volume, high ceiling option, or has he become more of a boomer bust wide receiver 2 in a new system?
So he was a second team All-American, I think in 2020. It's been a good 4 seasons since he was at his peak. the man is still a specimen, and he still has some pretty good skills on the field. If you have a 66 catch season and you go for 1,000 yards, let's project that to somebody like Malik Neighbors with twice as many targets. That's a 2,000 yard season. So 66 yards or 66 catches and 1,000 yards is pretty darn productive. He would be a perfect fit in Las Vegas. Las Vegas doesn't currently have an X receiver, and DK may have a limited route tree, but we know he's absolutely athletic, can jump through the building. He's built like he's chiseled out of granite. We watched him run down that defensive back. I mean, there is no questioning DK Metcalf's talent. The Raiders have Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers to run routes over the middle of the field. And DK Metcalf, although he has a limited-ish route tree, he could still be very productive, especially in that system if they get themselves a good quarterback. So I like that as a landing spot, especially given the fact that Pete Carroll was the guy that drafted him, etc. The thing about Metcalf's trade off-season options this year, though, it's kind of like, have you ever been on Temu, and you go to Temu and you put like $200 worth of stuff in your cart, and then you leave, and then all of a sudden you start getting emails that are like, hey, come back, remember that $200 you put in your cart? We'll give it to you for $9. And that's the way the DK Metcalf situation is going to come out. The Seahawks have come out and said, we want a first and a third for him. And also, you're going to probably have to sign him to an extension because he's got 1 year left on his contract. And Metcalf is saying that he wants $30 million. That would put him in the very top echelon of wide receivers, and he doesn't necessarily produce at that level. On top of that, the last time we had a big trade with a first rounder was Davante Adams, and he went for a first and a second. And he was about the same age. I want to say he was the same age or a year older, but far more productive than DK Metcalf. I would love to have DK Metcalf on the Raiders just for his fit, but I'm not willing to give up a first-round pick for him, and I don't think anybody else is, unless the Seahawks are okay with like a 2027 first, and that's it, not a third. Or, we'll give you a 2027 first and a sixth or a fourth or something like that from this year. That's the only way I can see it happening. And so I feel like kind of like with the Davante Adams situation in New York, when the team comes out and says, hey, we're open to trade, but if not, we're going to cut him. You just lost all your leverage there. Nobody's going to want to do it. We saw it happen with Derek Carr, where they were like, hey, we're going to shop him. And then if he doesn't get any offers that the team likes, they just wait it out and sign him as a free agent. So there's a high level of possibility that DK Metcalf stays with the Seahawks this year, which I think is probably going to be the best option for him, because he needs to have a show me year, get up into that 1,200, 1,400 yard range, show that he is a wide receiver one before somebody's going to give him wide receiver money. And that just didn't happen last year. So I think both of those requests, the first and the third and the $30 million contract, both of those are going to come up short. I could see the Seahawks taking a little bit less for him, a second and a fourth, something like that. And then a team, trying to sign him to an extension, or just, letting him go next year. But I don't think that he or the Seahawks have the leverage they think they do.
Yeah, and you never know what this trade market will be for him too. I mean, this wide receiver class is starting to gain some steam as well. A couple bigger body guys that might be able to take on a role like DK potentially. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. And I like your analysis there, bigz, on a team that is a landing spot for him would be the Raiders for sure, being a big bodied wide receiver. Now, JSN, obviously, after a breakout 2024, has firmly established himself as one of the NFL's promising young wide receivers. Even though he finished the year somewhat quiet in week 18, he did end up with, 1,000 yards, over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns, and he's Geno Smith's primary target now. What's your analysis on JSN? Is he a wide receiver one now? Is he going to take a huge leap forward in year 3 here, bigz, now that all this target competition is gone?
Well, considering he had his breakout year in 2024, I don't think he's going to take a huge leap forward, but he is in line to take a leap forward. We like to talk about third-year breakouts, and again, he has had his breakout season already, but third year is about the time that wide receivers really start to come into their own. And as long as he's 120 to 140 target guy, he's definitely in the conversation to finish in the top 12 as a wide receiver. I love JSN. I loved him coming out. Hated the landing spot for him simply because DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett were there. Now they possibly will have neither of them for JSN to kick around anymore. He will become the primary focus, and he will take a leap forward.
Yeah, and it's a pass-happy offense too. So I just definitely think lining up for a really good season 3 for him. And after a lackluster rookie season where he was plagued with that injury to start the year, and like you said, he was crowded in, now he's emerged, and I'm liking what I see here. Now, what I see is the community over at the Fantasy Sports Advice Network on the website, where, you can find all our great content, articles, shows, but also a good community where you can hang out and ask questions and just, be yourself. So hop over there, get yourself a premium membership, and bigz. Let's talk about Deebo Samuel and that big trade to the Commanders. Is he worth the risk in 2025? I talked about him last week on our show being a big fade for me, even no matter where he lands. Well, this is probably one of the best case scenarios for Deebo Samuel as far as landing spot goes, but I still remain bearish on him even for this upcoming season. He'd had a lackluster 2024, just 51 catches, 670 yards, 3 touchdowns. His production took a big decline. He had a career low 9.1 rushing yards. I mentioned all this on the show last week, bigz. What's your outlook on him as well? You were also bearish on him last week as well after I talked about him. What's your stance now on Deebo in his declining production, especially after a rough 2024? How do you feel about him in his move to Washington? Do you justify drafting him next year now that he's going to be in a dynamic offense once again?
Well, there's an adage in Dynasty that nobody is undraftable at the right price, and that certainly applies to Deebo Samuel. In redraft leagues, he reminds me a lot of the situation with Tee Higgins. He has a lot of trouble with injuries. He has a lot of spike games where he's not really consistent throughout his performance over the course of a season. So if I'm playing best ball, I would love to have a Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel stack. I think you can get that done probably in the first 3 or 4 rounds of a best ball draft. In redraft, again, I'm looking at him as a wide receiver 4. I wouldn't say that he's unrosterable for me, but I haven't been in on Deebo Samuel for quite a few years now. I do like the fact that he's going to Washington, and I'll tell you the reason why, and that reason is Adam Peters. So Adam Peters is the GM of the Washington Commanders, and it's not often that you follow GMs and their talent evaluation, but Adam Peters is one of those guys that I do. If Adam Peters likes somebody, then I almost like them by default. It's one of the reasons I was so high on Jaden Daniels, because I really, really like Adam Peters' player personnel decisions. Another one is Philadelphia Eagles GM Howie Roseman. There are a couple guys that I will follow into a burning building as long as we're coming out with good quality NFL players. So the fact that Cliff Kingsbury and Adam Peters have a plan for Deebo perks my interest a little bit. Perks my ears, piques my interest. So he may find himself on more teams this year than I've had him in the past. And so I guess you could say that his value has risen for me. Although the fact that he has that injury history and he's a spike game player, I'm not paying too much for him.
So what you're saying is he kind of perked your interest, if you will. There you go, folks.
He piqued my ears up.
There you go. Wait, hold on. What is going on here? We've got some breaking news from Jacksonville here, and we got a special guest that needs to come on here and talk about what's going on.
Jacksonville Jaguars fan, Schultzy.
Live from Jacksonville. Not really. Just off of my phone today.
So what is going on there in Jacksonville? They released Christian Kirk and quickly got scooped up by the Houston Texan, it looks like. And then about an hour ago, I got an alert saying that Evan Ingram is now on the move. So tell us about these moves, Schultzy, what it means for fantasy football, maybe what it means for Brian Thomas Jr., and what's your initial thoughts as a Jags fan?
Well, not entirely surprising on both ends there for each guy, right? I mean, we got some decent contracts handed out in a new regime. Everybody I've seen in Jaguar land has hinted at Ingram just is not much of a fit for Cohen's offense. So, like, that one kind of makes sense from a scheme point and a money thing. So, yeah, not entirely surprised. Kirk, a lot of people are upset about, and I get it. Like, he was really good in 22, was a big part of that playoff run. Dude, he's had trouble staying on the field the last few years, and when he has been, he just wasn't the same dude. There's a lot of bad drops, really crucial third down drops, too, from him. Yeah, I don't think it's the end of the world. You could potentially be looking at a Cooper Kupp trade here, maybe. Or Chris Godwin coming in. I mean, I think one of those two is a pretty obvious replacement in the slot. So look out for that. Other than that, I don't think you can really say anything about Brian Thomas yet, right? Because we don't know what's going to happen. We need to know who the other two dudes are on the field with him. Now, I'm not going to say that someone else is going to probably bring him down that much, right? Because he is that guy. But we still need to know who's going to be playing with him.
We have more breaking news out of Jacksonville. Oh, this one is shaking the fantasy landscape. The Jacksonville Jaguars have released Devin Duvernay.
Oh, snap.
Uh-oh.
This one's interesting, not Duvernay, but the Jaguars. You mentioned bigz about the losing all the leverage when you say, like, hey, if nobody trades, we're going to cut him. Right. The Christian Kirk thing happened the complete opposite. All the reports were he's been released, and then a few hours later, he's now traded to the Texans. So that one I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, it is an interesting situation, and I like that landing spot, honestly, for him with Houston. They're going to need a Band-Aid for Tank Dell, who's probably going to miss most of, if not all of 2025. bigz, what's your thought on Christian Kirk going there? Like Schultzy said, they're kind of just putting another Band-Aid on a Band-Aid. So what are your thoughts on him in Houston? Are you going to be okay with him playing the slot role there?
Christian Kirk is a best ball guy, and that's all he'll ever be. I won't have him in redraft. I made the mistake last year of being like, well, maybe there's a chance, and got burned. So that won't ever happen again. Every once in a while, we have like very concrete takes on certain players, and then new information comes across. And we would be remiss if we didn't change our take based on new information. That's how it should work. You go with the evidence that you have, and until some evidence changes whatever you think. And that's what happened with Christian Kirk last year. It didn't work out. So, fool me once. I do want to shout out a funny tweet on Twitter at Joe Beldner, JSN and BTJ showing up to practice. And it's two shots of the Fresh Prince walking into the empty house and looking around.
Perfect. I love it. That's great. Well, that's a great way to end the show, guys. A lot of action this week.
You end the show.
You end the show, man. It's your gig. You always end the show, man.
Okay.
Bring us home.
End the show. Bring us home, bigz.
How about Schultzy, since he's in here? Schultzy, you take us out.
Oh, all right. Well, what? I got nothing. You do it.
Thank you for watching the Fantasy Forecast with Grindberg and bigz. Make sure that you like and subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff. Tell us in the comments, are we dumb? Are we as dumb as we look? And if you like the show, like and subscribe. If you didn't like the show, like and subscribe anyway. Head over to Fantasy Sports Advice Network. That's fantasysportsadvice.com. And set up your membership today. If you're a paid member, when the season comes around, then you'll qualify for our jersey leagues, and you could win something pretty sweet.
Yeah, man. All right, from all of us on Fantasy Sports Advice Network, we hope you win, folks.
We hope you win.
Peace out.